Welcome back to the Empire State Sports Report. I'm your host, Adrianna, also known as New York Giants fangirl. Today, I'm so excited. I am joined by Dan Schneier, whose Twitter is Dan Schneier NFL. You guys probably know him from Big Blue Banter or CBS Sports. And today we're going to talk a lot about Jaxson Dart, but we're going to talk about some of the other draft picks. So, Dan, now that the draft is over, how are we feeling?
Feeling good, Adrianna. Thank you for having me back on. Always excited to be on this show. Always excited to talk ball with you. And look, I don't think there's any other way to be right now than optimistic as a Giants fan after that draft class. And you can look at it like, well, the roses, like, I'm looking at it through blue-colored glasses, or you could look at it like, look at what everyone else is saying about the Giants draft. Now, that doesn't always mean it's going to come to fruition. But what they did is they picked off value at all spots of this draft after day one. Round 3, round 4, even round 5. Those are all 3 picks that should have gone, in my mind, way earlier, specifically Marcus Bowe. But even the other 2, Cam Scatterbo to me was a top 75 overall player in this class. And Darius Alexander was probably a top 50, top 45 player in this class. And they're getting him 30 picks later from where that was. So just a value set from the value standpoint, they did really well. From the standpoint of, okay, we're prioritizing trenches again. I thought they did really well with Carter, with Alexander, with Bowe. From the standpoint of, okay, this draft class is pretty much historical in my mind, at least from a depth standpoint at the running back position. Let's make sure we don't come out of this draft without getting a running back because we're just not drafting into the strength of the class. Well, they did that too. So all of the things they did in this class, I liked. And then they made a decision to trade up for a quarterback, and that's getting their guy. Now, that one to me, that's the one I'm least sold on. Not just from the standpoint of the player evaluation, which obviously we've done, and I have my thoughts on that. I can go, there are positives and negatives. We'll get into that. But just from the standpoint of, did they find their guy, Adrianna, or did they feel the pressure to find their guy and draft someone and trade up for someone who they believe can be the guy, but there's also that pressure factor? Because if they definitely found their guy, like they did with Josh Allen, they wouldn't have taken Abdul Carter at 3. They would have taken Jaxson Dart at 3. So to me, it's a little bit of, we're going to make this gamble on this guy. We didn't have to give up that much, 2 mid-round picks, a third and the 99 and 34. And that is worth the price of the squeeze. Less so than this is our Josh Allen. And that's something we'll find out over time. And then we'll have to see.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit on Giants Collective last night because someone asked that exact same thing. If they really were sold on Jaxson Dart, why didn't they take him at 3? And my thought process was that I don't want to say generational for Abdul Carter, but the kid is obviously going to have a really good NFL career. And when you have your back against the wall and you have to win now, Abdul Carter makes the most sense to pick at 3. And if you also think that based on the way the board was going and where players were falling and this and that Shane felt confident enough that he could trade back into the first or potentially get him at 34, then maybe he just felt like from a value standpoint, Abdul Carter is the guy at 3, just like last year with JJ, right? Like they didn't pick JJ at 6 because they had neighbors graded higher than him. And I don't know if there were things that came out later about JJ, what they didn't like about him, but all we heard leading up to the draft was JJ McCarthy is their guy. They spent Easter Sunday with them. They've met with him a ton, top 30 visit, XYZ. They're picking JJ McCarthy. And then they pick neighbors. Right. So that was my thought process, is maybe it was just strictly value. Plus Joe knew that if he traded back into the first, no one else was going to go for Dart. And, I feel like you do. We don't really know what's so true or not true about the Rams if they really loved Dart. But I think it's interesting to hear different perspectives, that if they did love him so much, why not just take him at 3?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other side of it is, I think the Giants are pretty strict when it comes to not best player available, but understanding the opportunity cost of what it means when you pass up on a player like Neighbors or a player like Abdul Carter, a rare blue chip prospect in both regards. In Neighbors' case, they were paid off handsomely. I know a lot of people say, oh, but it didn't lead to wins. But the reality is that prospect has already cashed in on the blue chip label. Like he has realized it, and he's only going to get better. I'm sure they feel as confidently about Abdul Carter in that regard as well. They should. To me, his profile is a little bit more question marks because it's different to play receiver than linebacker, outside linebacker. But I still think they'll realize that potential soon. So in their minds, they don't feel, at least in my opinion, they don't feel like Jaxson Dart was that level of quarterback that can overcome passing on those players. And I'll be honest, I like Jaxson Dart's traits a lot, some of them specifically, but this to me is not a Josh Allen level type prospect. This is not a Drake May. This is not a Jaden Daniels type prospect. And I think I want to be very clear about that. So really what we're going to rely on, and I say that to say really what we're going to rely on is, it's time, Daboll, cash in on what you're supposed to be, this QB whisperer, someone who can get Jaxson Dart to see the game. Look, Lane Kiffin got Jaxson Dart to see the game in a very specific way, and it worked for the college game. That way is not going to work for the NFL game. Now it's on Daboll to mold Jaxson Dart from scratch with the skill set he has, which is good. That's the part I like. Jaxson Dart has the traits, but it's going to, the way he sees the game, it's going to have to change completely from the way he saw the game at Ole Miss. And that's on Brian Daboll. So that's what he's going to have. He's going to work with him from scratch, hopefully develop a system that works for Dart. What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? Let's lean on his strengths. But how he reads the game pre to post snap, that's on Daboll, and that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. One of the things that I think the Giants should do, and I think this is going to be an unpopular opinion, and I'm curious what you have to say, is I think they need to extend Shane and Daboll just through 2026, because I think the reality with Dart is he's likely to sit this entire year. Like, my expectation is the Giants are not going to win a lot of games this year, but they're going to be better. And if that's the case, and Russ Wilson looks good and the offense is moving well, we're not seeing Jaxson Dart, which means he's sitting for a whole year. So if we don't see Jaxson Dart until 2026 and Daboll's not the coach, we have no idea what kind of Jaxson Dart we're going to see. So I think you have to give everyone the benefit of the doubt of saying, I'm allowing Daboll to be the coach through 2026, because realistically, that's going to be the first full opportunity we're going to get to see Jaxson Dart play in the NFL.
It may be an unpopular opinion, but I share that opinion to some extent. Now, I have a caveat on that. Brian Daboll, as a head coach, has had some, I don't want to call them gaffes, but just some questionable decisions over his tenure as head coach, from time management to some of his decisions like putting Adoree Jackson as a punt returner, just different things over time that have really cost him in games and over the course of seasons. I need to see some improvement in that regard before I commit to him. Joe Schoen, on the other hand, I think has done a much better job and settled into his, like, the last two draft classes. I feel like he's done what you should do in drafts, pick off value and let the draft board fall to you, rather than making your mark like you have in the past with guys like trading up for Hyatt or trading up for Banks, for example, and things of that nature. So I feel a little more confident on the Schoen side. But I will also say the reason I agree with you, and it may be an unpopular opinion, is because of Jaxson Dart. And if we make this decision, and Joe Schoen was part of the decision too, to trade up and get Jaxson Dart, you have to probably give Daboll 2 years to develop this player. I'm not as sold we won't see Dart this year. Not because I actually think the Giants are going to be even probably more competitive than you just said. Like, I think they're going to win more games. I'm very optimistic, probably too optimistic. But if they don't, and they're losing games, but their defense is playing at a really high level that they're capable of playing at if they stay healthy, that's when I think we could see Dart, because every head coach goes through this process of in a season where their defense is playing much better than their offense, and their defense is giving them a chance to win games. We had this last year. The defense gave them every chance possible to win that Bengals game. They should have won that game. The defense outside of the CeeDee Lamb broken play gave them every chance possible to win that Dallas game. They should have won that game. So if that's the case, and Russell Wilson is the main reason in Daboll's mind why they're not winning football games and the defense is giving them a chance, I think we might see Dart at that point. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think you're onto something. Like, if you make this decision, you really got to give Daboll a chance to develop him.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm not sold on Daboll as a coach, and I don't think that splitting them up is the best idea, Shane and Daboll. But I just think that if they're really sold, and they sold John Mara on, this is the guy because of XYZ, he's got the traits, he's got, whatever, Daboll just needs to, like, get his hands on him to make him better, then I feel like you have to give him that opportunity. But I also worry about, like, all of the things that you mentioned, and then some, about Daboll's issues as a head coach. And I don't know if that's going to improve this year, but I have a little bit of faith because of what Joe Schoen has done throughout his tenure. He's continually gotten better, that I'm just like, oh God, I hope for all of our sake that Daboll can also improve, because
and let's be clear, it's not that I'm all out on Daboll or all negative. There are aspects of Daboll that I really like. His route concepts and the route combos that he calls, like, it's what I want to see out of an offense. It's attacking, intermediate, and vertical if you have the quarterback who can process it and get the ball out. there are traits with Dart that show me that he can. Even just some of the traits that people don't talk about, right? A lot of people talk about the physical traits, but there are aspects about his mental game that impress me when I watch his tape. I think he has a natural ability to understand spatial awareness and where to throw the football to lead the receiver into space rather than throwing it at the receiver. That's a really, really big one for me. I call that anticipation. It's not, there are times also where the guys are wide open in that scheme, and that's fine. But there are other moments where he is anticipating space. So that's what I really look for when it comes to quarterbacks, and we'll have to see how that specific trait develops over time.
Yeah, I'm excited. I have a little bit of faith in Daboll, but I'm with you where I'm like, I don't think that he's going to be the next Josh Allen. And I think that the people who are like, well, oh, Daboll really turned Josh Allen into what he is. If you've watched interviews with Josh Allen, it's not just Daboll. He's talked about how he's worked with specific coaches and people who helped him align his hips and whole upper body, and that improved his accuracy and all these other things. So I'm not saying that I think Daboll's a horrible quarterback coach. I think for people to just say that, well, he made Josh Allen what he is absurd.
I completely agree with you on that. I'd even venture upon saying what you're discussing with when Josh Allen entered the NFL, the main thing he had to improve on was his mechanics, both from the lower half to the upper half. And he worked with a quarterback coach specifically, I believe it's Jordan Palmer, but I'm not positive on that, to fix that. And he even talked about like going into I've heard an interview where he went into depth about the biomechanics of the entire upper body mechanics with the throw. That's not Daboll doing that. That's his quarterback coach and who he's working with. Daboll had concepts that worked for Josh Allen when they were together. But I would agree with you. I don't want to totally give Daboll credit for something we don't know for sure is his, he deserves credit for.
Yeah, let's continue on Dart for a second, because something that I saw from Size draft book was one of the concerns that he had with Dart was something similar, is that his lower body mechanics and his footwork, I think he described them as lazy. Mm-hmm. So do you see that as something that can be improved upon? We saw it with Josh Allen, but like we just said, it wasn't specifically just from Daboll. So do you see that as being something that Daboll and, Shea Tierney, maybe the rest of the quarterback coach, can really help him improve upon?
Definitely. This is the good thing to want. This is what you want. If you're drafting a quarterback prospect, you want them to have issues that can be fixed with coaching. Mechanics, footwork, those can be fixed, specifically footwork, especially. And I'll say this, I agree with Cy. This is something I brought up to Nick on our show. The footwork at times just looks, I don't want to call it sloppy. It's just like frantic at times. But there are also high-level moments of when it comes to the footwork on tape. I think we did a cut-up we're going to go – I did a cut-up we're going to go over in a little bit. I think on 2 of those throws, the footwork is exactly how you want it to be when it comes to the trail foot and the lead foot. So I think it's something that can be fixed. I think it's something that can be improved on. And some of it, to me, is going to come down to him as a person and an athlete. And I don't see any reason why he can't improve on that. And I think Nick brought up a great point. Like, Daniel Jones did make major strides when it came to that from college to the NFL level. There are the other issues about his game, but like that one area of his game did improve.
Yeah. Let's talk about the good things about Dart, because we do know some of the things are he's good under pressure. He gets rid of the ball quickly, pretty good accuracy. You talked about the anticipation where he's able to lead the wide receivers. What other things do you like about Dart that we should be excited about?
Yeah, I like a bunch about Dart. I like he has a very natural, quick release. The ball doesn't take a while to get out of his hand, or even from the start of his delivery to the end of his delivery, it doesn't take a while. And that's really important to me, because in the NFL, those split milliseconds, whatever you want to call them, make all the difference on timing, on rhythm in passing game, and sometimes on the DBs making a play on the ball. I also like that he has the third base shortstop background. To me, this is something I always look for in quarterbacks. Like, you have examples like Mahomes and some of the better quarterbacks in the NFL who played baseball in the infield. What it allows you to do is throw from different arm slots. So you'll see moments, and we have on the cut up I made that we're going to go over in a little bit, you'll see moments of him throwing off platform where it's not just that over the top delivery that you see from like a Shedeur Sanders or a Daniel Jones or even Eli, but Eli had the velocity to make up for it. It's that 3/4 delivery and you see from a lot of the best quarterbacks now. And that allows you to get the ball out quicker. It allows you to throw from different arm angles, different arm slots, which allows you to put different trajectory on the football and either get it over the defender who's coming in to bat the pass or over the second level, like layer defenders. And that's another thing I really like about his game. he throws a very catchable football. We'll have a couple clips that'll show that as well. The ball has really good trajectory. It goes up and down instead of a flat ball. And one of the things Nick and I always discussed when it came to Daniel Jones film reviews, he threw a very flat football. So the ball would kind of get there on a line instead of going up and down. And it's a lot harder to catch the ball. You've seen a lot of those deep throws that haven't connected with the Giants over the years, like the Slayton one against Washington and others, where the ball just came out super flat and it's not as easy. You want the ball to kind of have that Russ-like trajectory that comes up over the top. You can either run under it or it's just very catchable. And Dart has that. And he shows the ability to layer the ball over that second level, which I really, really appreciate. That to me is, and we'll see that in a few of the clips as well, is something that really stands out to me because you need to have that at the NFL level. I also think he's somebody who's really tough, really physical at times. And I'll go over this as well, but too physical, too tough. Like he has that Daniel Jones to him, which is I'm going to run over a defender. I'm going to lower my throwing shoulder into a defender and try to get extra yards. That's really idiotic and it's not smart. And we saw what it could do for the Giants over the years. Jones had a concussion against Dallas where he had to leave the game. Jones had multiple neck injuries from this style of play, one that required surgery, the other that didn't require surgery. But ever since he came back, it kind of looks like he doesn't have the same pace on the ball. You can't do that as a quarterback. You have to slide or get out of bounds or find creative ways. Like even some of these quarterbacks I see as runners find creative ways to dive. But with that said, the toughness is something that every teammate is going to love. If they loved it with Daniel Jones, they're going to love it with Dart. If you're a quarterback and you're willing to put your body on the line for your team, it's something different for these players. But outside of that, I think he's a really good, smart runner. He understands spatial awareness well and how to maximize yards on these design quarterback runs. And he was used on design quarterback runs. That's been a part of Daboll's offense ever since he got here, no matter who the quarterback was. Even with DeVito, he ran design quarterback runs because that's just, in his mind, an easy way to get some yards. And Dart will be able to do that for the Giants as well whenever he plays. I think another thing I really like about Jaxson Dart's game is while he's not the most accurate thrower on the vertical path, and some do go off target, when he is locked in and throws a good ball on the vertical path, it's always the same. It's always the same thing for me. It's let out into space again with that trajectory that goes up and down, and the receivers are running under it. It's not a lot of, I don't see a lot of receivers having to stop, change their momentum, stop their momentum, look behind them. And that's something that was a problem for the Giants for the last 6 years. And that's something that could really change. And the last thing I want to bring up, this is very long-winded. I'm sorry, but you asked me to do this, right? It's just hard not to. The last thing I want to bring up, this one is important to me. When I'm watching tape, I'm seeing enough examples of Jaxson Dart in a situation where the D tackle beats the guard or whatever it may be, the edge gets in, and the pressure is bearing down on him, and he knows he's about to get hit. He stands in, he takes the hit, and he delivers the football, and the accuracy does not wane very much, if at all, when he's getting hit. That's so important to me. And there's examples of that, one we're going to go over against Wake Forest, where not only is he about to get hit and the accuracy doesn't wane, he actually leads the receiver into space and throws that with anticipation despite the defender coming down on him. I can't tell you how many times I watch other quarterbacks struggle with this ability to throw it into space under pressure or to remain somewhat accurate under pressure. So I think those are all examples of what Daboll really likes in him.
That makes a lot of sense. And it actually, I am now getting the feeling that maybe we have all been blaming the Giants wide receivers too long. And maybe this is why they have all led the league in drops while Daniel Jones was the quarterback, because he's not, well, we know the ball placement was one thing. The accuracy wasn't always there. So that's a huge part of it. Like the amount of throws that are at Wandale's feet are egregious.
Yeah.
But the lack of spin and the touch on the ball is not making it that catchable. And I feel like over the years that really hasn't been something that's been mentioned all that much. I think I've heard you guys talk about it, but outside of that, it's always just been, oh, the receiver this, or Jones throws the ball at their feet.
And that's the reality of fans. For the most part, people blame all drops on receivers. I am not a believer in that at all. I think ball placement plays a huge role because accuracy is one thing. Like Shedeur Sanders was accurate because he has a repeatable motion, but it wasn't always the best ball placement. And those are two different things. Ball placement comes from timing, rhythm, and anticipation, because you could throw accurately to a spot, but if you're not picking the right spot to throw to, if you're throwing to where the receiver is rather than where he's going to be, it doesn't matter how accurate you are with that throw. You can go right to the target, but if you're picking the wrong target, it's going to be behind the receiver. He's going to have to stop his momentum or he can't make the catch. And when you're actually not picking, when you are throwing with anticipation and picking the right target of where to throw to and letting the receiver run to it, doesn't matter as much about being as pinpoint with the accuracy. So I'm looking for that second bucket a lot more than the first. And that was one of the issues with the Giants over the last 6 years. It was a lot of the first bucket. And so a lot of times you'll see a receiver have to stop. This happened with Waller. This happened with Slayton a bunch. And it's behind him. And it's like, oh, that's a drop. But it's like, is it a drop or did the receiver have to change his whole momentum, flip his whole body, make this catch over here when it could have just been in front of him, led in stride, and he wouldn't have dropped it in that regard?
Yeah, makes me excited for a guy like Slayton because, last year Neighbors was able to do so much. And I just feel like that quarterback play, especially from someone like Russell, is going to make a difference for everyone on offense, but really for someone like Slayton, who has been bullied for his drops and has improved them over the last couple of years. And now you're going to have a quarterback who's really going to be accurate and get the ball directly in his hands where it belongs.
I like that you used the word bullied for his drops. Like, it is so sadly true of our culture, of our Giants Twitter fan base culture. Like, there's so much weird bullying going on. There's so much weird energy and unfortunately, and that's partly because they've been so bad. Like, if Dart does hit, things are going to change in the fan base for the better so much. But like, I really hope it's not a situation where like there's a lot of bullying still going on during this Dart era. It's just so frustrating at times to be a part of that fan base.
I know. Well, and that's why part of me really wants him to sit for the whole year, because I'm really nervous that if he comes out and, the first game is tough, it's going to be fire everyone. This guy sucks.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no patience at all. So I'm like,
we've run out of patience as a fan base.
Literally. All right, let's get into this Dart cut up because I think this will be interesting for people to watch.
Yep, let's move back there. If you can rewind it to the start, we'll go over each of these throws. So this first one that I put on here is an example of the arm talent. So this is a far hash throw. What do I mean by that? Look at the hash marks of where he's lined up. And you could see that he's right on the hash mark in this clip when he gets into his drop, and he's throwing to the other side of the field. So if he was in the middle or if he's on a left hash, that wouldn't be a far hash throw. These are the most difficult and the most challenging throws for any quarterback at any level. And in this example, he does a good job of throwing with timing. He does a good job of layering the football over the second level defender, and he throws the ball pretty accurately. It's not the most perfect ball placement, but this is a tough throw. Any kind of far hash throw is a tough throw.
Okay.
And you can see he's throwing to a spot in the second clip when we run back from the end zone angle. Yeah, you can run it. So it's partially why the receiver, it looks like the receiver may be coming back to the ball, but he's picking that spot, and it's not a bad spot to pick. It's over the second level defender, and it's to a spot where the receiver can secure the catch outside the numbers and then run upfield. But this is a tough throw from the far hash. You really got to put drive on the football. So this is a good example of what he can do arm talent wise. This second clip is just another example of another far hash throw. As you can see, he's lined up on the hash, and a great example of getting the ball out on time with good ball placement, and from the far hash, a very difficult throw.
And I think one thing that you and Nick have talked about a lot too is that he's able to throw off his back foot. Like when you mentioned him getting pressured a lot, but like you said, there's no issue with the ball placement, the accuracy, the timing. Like, it still seems like even though he's not fully planted and he's on the move as he's throwing, it's not affecting the ball or the throw at all.
Correct. And we'll see an example of that. My favorite throw of his, maybe of the season, toward the end of this cut up that I made. And that's exactly right, because he's able to generate power from a non-balanced base. And what do I mean by that? And it's exactly what you said. And the reason he's able to do that is because he has that third base shortstop background. So he doesn't have to have that over the top motion. He can throw from 3/4 and still, like you said, generate power, velocity, and ball placement. Because otherwise, if you're an over the top thrower, you have to really have balanced base and your shoulders squared, because we've seen some of these over the top throwers not have their balance base and their shoulders squared, and the ball just was really inaccurate. So that's why I always feel like there's such an advantage when you draft these types of prospects that can throw off platform with that 3/4 throw. One of their best players on the field. So just maybe an interesting UDFA find for the Giants.
Yeah, because I know a lot of players, once we got Dart, a lot of fans, were like, Trey Harris has to be next. He has to be next.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this could work out really well if we ended up with Juice.
Yeah, I was interested in Harris at 76 if he was going to still be there. He won a few picks before, but I am much happier with an interior defensive lineman like Darius Alexander. I just believe in building the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is an example of what we talked about earlier, which is with the pressure barreling down in his face, can you maintain accuracy? Can you maintain ball placement? And can you maintain the ability to lead the receiver into space? He does all three of those on that one. It's one of my favorite throws of the season. He knows this defender's
Yeah,
about to
you can
crush
see that.
him. And instead of throwing it, like most quarterbacks in that situation will throw it to where the receiver is at the moment of getting hit. He actually leads that into the space for the receiver to run into it. And I love that throw.
It's a
This
beauty.
one, This one is an example of layering the football again. He understands, and this is also a good example of trajectory and touch and throwing a catchable football like I talked about. He understands the only way to complete this pass is to put that kind of loft and layer on it, because if not, that defender he's throwing it into, that's where it's the second level defender that's vacating that zone, he's going to throw it into that and he's going to undercut it and either tip it or intercept it, but he gets that ball up and over and down. Really perfect ball placement.
Yeah, he throws a really nice ball. And some of the deep balls that I've seen him throw are really beautiful.
Yep. And this is another example of I put this one in because I thought this was a good example of how he throws a catchable football. You could just see from here, watch him get into his, and also a good example of the footwork I talked about. When I'm saying when it's right, it's right. This is a good example. If you roll that back a little bit to the end zone angle and you watch his lead foot and his trail foot on this one. Yeah. So we'll have him here. Makes the read and just steps in, makes the throw, and such a catchable football. You could see the trajectory of that football come up, down, right outside the numbers so the receiver can catch it and run upfield in stride and create yards after catch. That was a big, big problem when it came to the issues with ball placement Giants quarterbacks have had, Jones, Locke, whoever it may be, because a lot of times the ball might get there, but does the receiver have any chance to make yards after catch? We saw it with Wandale holding him back, Neighbors at times, and this is something Dart can bring to the offense. And then finally, I think, or is this one more example of, that's another far hash throw that I put in there. Just a good example, again, of throwing the ball to the far hash, layering the football over that second level defender, or I believe it might be a safety creeping up. I'm not exactly sure, but look at the ball come. You can't see it as much here, but up and over the top of that second level defender.
Yeah, really nice.
This is another good example of Dart, in my opinion, just understanding spatial awareness, and where to lead the receiver there. You could see on that one that he led the receiver into space so the receiver could run under it.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. It's hard to do. Trust me, me and Nick have these issues all the time running it back, but see that the receiver can catch it in stride. It's a catchable ball with good trajectory, and he can maximize yards after catch. And then finally, we're getting to the last clip here. My favorite throw on here. A great example of what you brought up earlier, Adrianna. The ability to throw off platform, not have your base set, not have your shoulders squared. The natural arm talent to be throwing as a righty rolling to your left is really difficult. You have to flip your hips around to make the throw. But he, again, with that baseball background, shortstop and third base, I believe, has that ability to throw off platform, to not need to have his shoulders squared with that 3/4 release that he likes. And this is just one of the best throws you'll see from a quarterback. Breaks pocket, rolling to his opposite shoulder, has the arm talent to get that ball perfectly on the money.
Yeah.
The end zone angle is even better, as we'll roll through that here. Just
He seems
awesome.
pretty fast too. Like the way that he was able to get out of there quickly.
He's a good athlete.
That nice throw. Yeah.
One thing people might not know about him is he played in a bunch of different offenses before he got to Ole Miss. Like he had the air raid with USC. He had and then he went to Ole Miss. But before that, he played in a wing T offense. So that, like, he credits that for his toughness. But that was like, he was running the football a lot. And if you're playing in a wing T offense as the quarterback, you're essentially a running back in a lot of ways. So that, I think, plays a role in his athleticism, a runner. Some things we didn't capture in the cut up. There are moments you can see on his tape of him making his way through progressions, but there are mostly, I would say that's not a big part of the offense in Ole Miss. It was a lot of one read stuff. So this is a big issue that we have going over. It's not an issue. It's just an open-ended question, really. Can Daboll get him to see his system well and to process well as a ball of clay? Because he's going to have to really start from, in my opinion, a very not scratch position, but there's a foundation to what to what Dart has. And actually, one final thing to speak on that. I talked about this with Nick in the post-draft presser. The thing I like the most about this Dart draft pick, and you could see it as watching one game of film or watching 10 or 11 games of film, is this is a quarterback, partly because he played with Lane Kiffin and learned through him, but this is a quarterback who reads high to low. What do I mean by that? A lot of what concepts these quarterbacks get at the NFL and the college level is half read stuff, sometimes full field progressions, but some half read stuff, half field read stuff where you're either going to read the low man or the high man. So a lot of quarterbacks, Daniel Jones had this issue, though he didn't have it with Shermer, but over time it kind of changed where he just would read low to high. And so whatever that route concept is, he's going to take the underneath route of it. It's the easier throw. It's the higher level completion, and it's something that a lot of quarterbacks do. And there were times where Jones tried to read low to high to low and got trapped into coverages. I remember against the Colts, he saw there was a cover two. They were playing trap cover two. This was the last year. This was the 2022 year. They're playing trap cover two coverage. He thinks he has the whole shot. He puts it out there and the ball kind of hangs and he gets Slayton like hung out to dry. But with Dart, he's always reading high to low. So he's going to try those deep outs. He's going to try to go outside the numbers. He's going to attack intermediate and vertical. It's exactly what Brian Daboll wants and needs in his system. Why do you think he signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston? It's because those are two quarterbacks who read high to low. Now, it's not a perfect way to be. Like Jameis gets himself in trouble reading high to low. Dart gets himself in plenty of trouble reading high to low. Some balls that could be intercepted, some balls that get his receivers into precarious positions, but I will always take a quarterback who reads high to low rather than low to high. And I know that that's what Brian Daboll needs to make his system have a shot.
Yeah. I feel like when we talk about the traits and, the reasons why they picked Dart, it's pretty easy to see why based on those things. When you look at the film and you see what he does well, like you can definitely see that he is a Brian Daboll pick for sure.
Yeah. And that's in the end, that's what they gave, right? I mean, we've heard. There's possibility Shane and people in the front office like the other quarterbacks. We'll never know any of that stuff. It's really, to me, very speculative by the fan base, and that's okay. It's fun as a fan to speculate, and you get one report from one reporter that's an anonymous source that says this happened, and it's like, all right, well, there's a lot of anonymous sources around this time of year. But in the end, the obvious thing we know is that Daboll wanted this specific quarterback out of this specific draft class. Of course, he wanted Cam Ward too, and he tried to trade up for him, but that wasn't a possibility.
Yeah, which is such a bummer. But I do feel like there is good potential with Dart. And if he just has the opportunity to really sit and soak it in, I have faith that, with Daboll and Tierney and even Kafka, that, maybe they're going to get him to the point where they hope he can get to.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought off Kafka because he's definitely could play a big role in his development.
Absolutely. If you have time for one more question,
sure.
Who outside of Dart and maybe Abdul Carter, because I think every Giants fan is hyped about him, who was your favorite draft pick out of the rest of the guys?
It's really tough because the next three draft picks, I love all of them. They're all basically A+ draft picks for me, but I have to pick the best one. Is it the best? Is it who I think is the best value pick or who's my favorite pick?
Who's your favorite pick?
Okay. My favorite pick by far of those three is Cam Skattebo. He was before the draft, before the Giants had any connection to him. I said, I'm big on watching the skill players in the draft, specifically running backs, because it's one of the positions I feel most comfortable evaluating. And because of what I do for my job, I work for CBS Sports and I write a lot of draft profiles for them. And it's all fantasy. So it's, running backs, receivers, quarterbacks. So I watched a lot of this running back class. And so I felt really confident about my evaluations on the class. And I said that the two best values in this class were going to be RJ Harvey, who ended up going in round 2 unexpectedly. I thought he was going to be a 4th round pick because of his age and things like that. So he's not even as good a value now based on that fact. And I said it was going to be Cam Skattebo. So before the Giants even drafted him, I had him as my favorite value in the class. So then the Giants drafted him at 105, and I was ecstatic about the pick. To me, when it comes to Cam Skattebo, I don't think that he is limited to being a change of pace. I don't think he's limited to being a 1A or a 1B in a backfield. I think he can be your entire backfield. And I think if you're looking for proof of that, just watch any Arizona State game. Watch the last 12 games of the season where he had over 100 scrimmage yards in all of those games, threw passes for touchdowns, caught passes for touchdown. Watch how the defense plays Arizona State. Stacked boxes, all eyes on Skattebo in the pass game if he's running a screen. We have to stop Skattebo, a lot like how teams play Barkley now or some of these running backs in the NFL that are really good. And that's not to say it's going to translate 1-to-1. He would have been a 1st-round pick if that were the case, if he ran something better than a 4.65 or had better size because he's a smaller back. Not that small, but smaller for NFL standards, maybe at 5'9.5". But even if it translates 75%, which I think it very well could, we are looking at somebody who could be the 1A for sure in this backfield. And I like Tyrone Tracy a lot, but I had a higher grade on Scadaboo coming out because it's the contact balance. I mean, outside of Ashton Genty, no back in this class has better contact balance. And to me, that's one of the number one traits. You look at the advanced stats, the two that translate most from the college game to the NFL are forced missed tackle rate and our yards after contact per attempt. Why? Well, that's pretty intuitive, right? Like if you can create on your own, you're going to be a better back. He was great in both. I think he was over 100 forced missed tackles. The only other back in this class who had that was Ashton Genty, and his yards after contact was sixth best in the class. Also great. He even had the second best yards per route run in the class. That's the thing I don't think a lot of people realize about Scadaboo. He's an incredibly natural receiver. He can run a bunch of different routes, but it's also, you watch him on some of these broken plays, which if they have Dart at quarterback and even Ross, they're going to have some of those scramble type plays. He's really natural at understanding how to work back to the quarterback, how to present a target for the quarterback, and then how to adjust the football no matter where the ball is thrown. That's why he was second best in yards per route run out of all running backs in this class at receiver. I think he's a better receiver than Tracy, even though Tracy played receiver. I just feel like watching them on tape, he's a more natural guy. And I like Tracy a lot. I'm happy that we'll have a 1A, 1B at some point in this backfield for incredibly cheap, under contract on rookie deals. But Scadaboo to me has even more potential than that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this class and the way that the roster has been built the last 2 years, because it does feel like we're finally getting back to old school Giants football, where we're building through the trenches. We're going to have a double-headed monster at running back. We're going to have guys at the front line who you can't get past. So it feels good. I'm like you, we're like, I'm getting excited, but last year I thought they were going to win 11 games. So I'm like, I got to rein it in a little bit, or I'm just going to be wildly disappointed by like week 4.
Yeah, as far as this year and what will happen, I know already, I'm not doing any predictions yet, but I'm going to be more optimistic about their win total than most, because people are going to look at the schedule and things of that nature. I just have a good, strong feeling about two important things. One, what this defense is capable of, and two, the level of play and how much Locke and Jones really held back the offense and what that's going to mean with Russ in there. I don't know if it can be stated, and it really feels that way to me from watching the tape, and I could be wrong on that. Or Russ could be worse. Russ may not play to the level he played with the Steelers last year. It may be a revert back to the Broncos days. But even that, if you look at what he did with the Broncos, it's still light years better than what we got at quarterback over the last few years, with the exception of 2022. So to me, that's going to make all the difference. But we'll have to see. I mean, there's a lot of time between now and then, and we have to stay healthy more than anything.
Yes, definitely. But I think for the first time in a long time, the general consensus of fans is optimism, which is something that we haven't had in a long time. And people are going to be excited to go to camp and watch preseason. And if we see Dart in preseason and we get to see, Russ and Jameis during training camp, that alone is more exciting than a year 6 of Daniel Jones.
Yeah, for sure. There's the training camp aspect. It's going to be really fun to watch. We have 3 quarterbacks. I'm worried actually about the reps. Like I'm worried about how many reps Dart will get. Like I'm a big proponent, no offense, great fan favorite, whatever. I'm a big proponent to not bringing DeVito into camp, because I want just 3 quarterbacks for the reps. I don't really want to waste any reps on him that could go to Dart, because they're just so limited in today's CBA. But I want to touch on one thing you actually mentioned a few minutes ago that I thought was a really good point. They are starting to build some remnants or aspects of what worked so well for them during their Super Bowl years. This elite defensive line, potentially a star receiver like Burris or Nix at the time. You could say Cruz, whatever you want, in Neighbors. And then obviously the offensive line is the big proponent here, and we'll see what happens with that. But Nick and I were really enthused by what we saw on tape for the offensive line before all the injuries happened. So now, of course, they're going to have to stay healthy. That's a key to all of this on the offensive line. But if they do and just get a little bit of injury luck, like this team has gotten no injury luck. Like any team that wins the Super Bowl or makes a run has luck and the injury front. That's just how it goes. It's like a variance game. Giants have not had that for a while. So if they can just get that going, it could be a more exciting season than people think.
Yeah. Do you have that video of you guys reviewing the offensive line from last year? Because I think people would be interested in that, because I think a lot of fans think that before Andrew Thomas went down, we were still one of the worst offensive lines.
It's just like a combination. We did the offensive film breakdowns like weeks 1 through 6 or whatever until Thomas got hurt. And
Okay.
throughout those, we were giving out grades. We always give like a 1 to 10 grade. And we look back on our notes and it's just a film grade. We look back on our notes, we're like, wow, that was by far and away the best stretch of grades that we've given out for the Giants offensive line in a 6-game span ever since we started doing this podcast.
Wow.
It ended up being, now specifically in pass protection, the run blocking was not the best we've ever given out, but in pass protection, which is what we're looking for most, I think it was really good until the injuries came.
Okay, awesome. And people can find that on Big Blue Banter's YouTube. And where else can they find you and your work?
Yeah, thank you. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Schneier NFL. You can find my fantasy work, and that includes draft profiles on cbssports.com. Go to fantasy or go to NFL draft, and then check out the Big Blue Banter podcast. You can just type in Big Blue Banter on YouTube and find it and subscribe there, or Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast.
I'll link it all in the show notes for people too.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on again.